It was a cold November evening when I got the text. My sister, Emma, had been driving home from a friend's house, and she sent me one last message before her phone went silent. "I'm almost home." At first, I didn't think much of it. She often drove late at night, and her texts were always brief. But as the hours passed, and she didn't walk through the door, something inside me began to tighten. A knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen no matter how many times I told myself she was probably just running late. What if everything you thought about someone being almost home turned out to be wrong? What if those 3 words became the last thing they ever said? The house felt eerier than usual that night. The wind outside rattled the windows like restless fingers tapping against glass. Shadows stretched across the walls, shifting with every flicker of the street lamp outside. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, willing it to light up with some explanation, anything to tell me why Emma wasn't here yet. Her car hadn't broken down. Her friends confirmed she'd left their place over an hour ago. So where was she? You've probably felt this kind of dread before. The slow creep of unease that starts in your chest and spreads until it feels like your whole body is vibrating with tension. It's not panic, not yet, but it's close enough to make your hands shake and your breath hitch. That's exactly how I felt sitting there alone, listening to the creaks and groans of the old house settling around me. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been, every shadow darker, every silence heavier. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I called her number again, even though I knew what would happen. Straight to voicemail. Her cheerful voice greeted me after the beep, asking me to leave a message. "Emma, please call me back," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Something's wrong. Just let me know you're okay." As soon as I hung up, I regretted leaving such a desperate-sounding message. Maybe she was fine. Maybe she'd stopped somewhere for gas or coffee and forgotten a text. Or maybe... No, I refused to finish that thought. I decided to retrace a route. It wasn't far, just 20 minutes by car, but it felt endless as I drove along the empty roads, my headlights cutting through the thick fog that had rolled in. Everything looked different at night, distorted and unfamiliar. The trees lining the highway loomed like specters, their branches clawing at the sky. Even the houses we passed seemed abandoned, their windows dark and lifeless. At one point, I saw something that made my heart stop, a pair of taillights glowing faintly in the distance. My pulse quickened as I sped up, hoping beyond hope that it was her car, pulled over on the side of the road. But when I got closer, disappointment hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't her, it was just some random vehicle parked haphazardly, its driver nowhere to be seen. Still, I slowed down, peering into the darkness beyond the shoulder. There was nothing there but more emptiness, swallowing everything whole. When I finally reached her supposed destination, the quiet cul-de-sac where our family lived, I found only silence waiting for me. No sign of her car, no trace of her anywhere. The streetlights cast pale circles onto the pavement, making the world feel smaller somehow, boxed in by artificial light. I parked in front of our house and stepped out, the cold air biting at my skin. For a moment, I stood there, scanning the neighborhood, hoping against all odds that I'd see her walking toward me. But there was nothing, just the hollow echo of my own breathing and the distant hum of electricity buzzing in the wires above. Back inside, I tried calling everyone I could think of, her friends, mutual acquaintances, even distant relatives. No one had heard from her. By now, the knot in my stomach had turned into a full-blown storm, churning and twisting until I could barely breathe. I paced the living room, clutching my phone like it might suddenly burst into life with news of her safe return. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. Then, just as I was about to give in to despair, my phone buzzed. My heart leapt into my throat as I grabbed it, praying it was her. Instead, it was a notification from the local news app. Missing person alert. 24-year-old woman last seen leaving friend's house. Below the headline was a picture of Emma, smiling brightly in a photo taken months ago. My vision blurred as tears welled up in my eyes. This couldn't be happening. Not to her. Not to us. The article was sparse on details, mentioning only that she'd vanished without a trace sometime between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. Authorities were asking anyone with information to come forward. They included a hotline number, which I immediately dialed, my voice trembling as I explained who I was and what little I knew. The officer on the other end sounded sympathetic but distant, assuring me they'd do everything they could. Somehow, his calm professionalism only made things worse. Hours later, I still hadn't slept. I sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall, replaying every possible scenario in my head. Had she been in an accident? Kidnapped? Or had she simply chosen to disappear, leaving behind nothing but a cryptic text message? Each possibility felt worse than the last, gnawing at my sanity like rats in the dark. And then, just as dawn began to break, I heard it, a soft knock at the door. The knock came again, louder this time, jolting me out of my spiraling thoughts. My heart thudded against my ribs as I stood frozen in place, staring at the front door. Who could it be at this hour? The sun had barely begun to rise, painting the sky in pale streaks of orange and gray. No one should have been here. No delivery drivers, no neighbors, no friends stopping by unannounced. Not now. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Maybe if I stayed silent, whoever was outside would go away. But the knocking persisted, steady and deliberate, each sound reverberating through the quiet house like a warning. Slowly, I moved toward the door, my legs feeling heavy as though they were made of lead. My hand hovered over the deadbolt, trembling slightly before I twisted it open and pulled the door in. On the other side stood a man I didn't recognize. He looked ordinary enough, mid-30s, wearing a plain jacket and jeans. But there was something about his expression that sent a chill crawling down my spine. His eyes darted past me into the house, scanning the space behind me with an unsettling intensity. Before I could say anything, he spoke. "Are you Emma's sister?" His voice was low, almost too calm, and it carried a strange edge that made my stomach churn. "Yes," I managed to reply, gripping the edge of the door tightly. "Who are you?" He hesitated for a fraction of a second too long before answering. "My name's Daniel. I knew your sister." Knew. The past tense hit me like a punch to the gut. I want to slam the door shut right then, but something kept me rooted in place. Instead, I asked, "What do you mean, New? Do you know where she is?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably, glancing over his shoulder as though expecting someone, or something, to appear behind him. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice even further. "Look, I don't know how much she told you about what she was involved in, but she's in trouble. Big trouble. And if you want to help her, we need to talk." Every instinct screamed at me to shut the door and call the police. This whole situation reeked of danger, of things far beyond my understanding. But beneath the fear, curiosity burned brighter. What did he mean by involved in? What kind of trouble could Emma possibly be in that would make her vanish without a trace? Against every rational impulse, I stepped aside and let him in. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the silence between us thick and suffocating. Daniel fidgeted with his hands, avoiding eye contact as though he couldn't bring himself to look directly at me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he began to speak. "She wasn't just visiting a friend that night," he said, his words slow and measured. "She was meeting someone dangerous." "Dangerous how?" I pressed, leaning forward despite the unease prickling at the back of my neck. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "There's a group, a network, really. They operate under the radar, doing things most people wouldn't believe. Blackmail, extortion, worse. Your sister stumbled onto something she shouldn't have, a secret they'll kill to protect." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. It sounded absurd, like the plot of some cheap thriller movie. But the gravity in his tone, the way his hands trembled when he mentioned kill, made it impossible to dismiss outright. "And you're telling me this because—" I trailed off, letting the question hang in the air. "Because I care about her," he snapped, his composure cracking for the first time. "Because I tried to warn her, but she didn't listen." And now, his voice faltered, and he looked away, guilt etched into every line of his face. A cold dread settled over me. If even half of what he was saying was true, then Emma wasn't just missing. She was in mortal danger. But there was another thought nagging at the edges of my mind. Why was he here? How did he know so much about this supposed group? Was he part of it? Or was he lying to me? Try to manipulate me into doing something reckless? Before I could ask any of these questions, my phone buzzed on the table. Both of us froze, our eyes locking onto the device as though it might explode. When I finally reached for it, my hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The screen lit up with a text message from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions." That was all it said. 3 simple words, yet they carried a weight that crushed the air out of my lungs. I glanced at Daniel, whose face had gone deathly pale. He grabbed the phone from my hand, reading the message himself. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he stood abruptly, backing away from the table. "You need to leave," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Right now? Pack a bag, get in your car, and drive somewhere safe. Don't stop. Don't tell anyone where you're going." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, rising to my feet. "You can't just show up here, drop this bombshell, and then act like..." "They're watching you," he interrupted, his eyes wide with panic. "If you stay, they'll come for you too. Trust me, I've seen what happens to people who get too close." With that, he turned and bolted for the door, leaving me alone in the suddenly suffocating kitchen. My mind raced, trying to piece together everything that had just happened. Who was Daniel, really? And who or what was they? As the minutes ticked by, the house grew quieter, the silence pressing down on me like a physical weight. I tried calling Emma again, hoping against hope that she'd answer. But all I got was her cheerful voicemail greeting, mocking me with its normalcy. Then, as I stood there clutching my phone, another notification popped up. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a photo attachment from the same unknown number. My finger hovered over the screen, paralyzed by equal parts fear and morbid curiosity. Against my better judgment, I tapped it open. The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, until it filled the screen. It was a picture of Emma, sitting in what looked like a dimly lit room. Her wrists were bound with rope, and her face was streaked with tears. But worst of all was the look in her eyes. Not fear, exactly, but resignation, like she already knew she wasn't getting out alive. Beneath the photo was a single line of text, "Tell anyone, and she dies." I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt like they'd been encased in ice, and the room around me seemed to tilt as though gravity itself had shifted. The photo was still on the screen, glaring up at me with its cruel clarity. Emma's face, her defeated expression, burned into my mind, refusing to let go no matter how hard I tried to blink it away. Every instinct screamed at me to call the police, to scream for help, to do something. But that message, those 3 chilling words beneath her image paralyzed me. "Tell anyone, and she dies." It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. Whoever sent this knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't amateurs, they weren't playing games. This was calculated, deliberate, and horrifyingly effective. And now I was caught in their web too. The phone slipped from my trembling hands, clattering onto the floor. I stared down at it, unable to tear my eyes away from the glowing screen. What was I supposed to do? If I stayed silent, Emma might die anyway, or worse. But if I told anyone, even the authorities, I risked making things unimaginably worse. Was there some third option, some way out of this nightmare? Or was I already trapped? Hours passed, though it felt more like days. I sat hunched over the kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall while my thoughts spiraled endlessly. Sleep was impossible, food unthinkable. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow outside the window sent adrenaline surging through my veins. The isolation was suffocating, but I couldn't leave. Not after what Daniel had said. Not after seeing that photo. At some point, I forced myself to pick up the phone again. I scrolled through my contacts, landing on Detective Harris's number, the officer who'd taken my initial report about Emma's disappearance. My thumb hovered over the call button, trembling so violently I almost dropped the phone a second time. Could I trust him? Would he believe me? Or would involving him put Emma in even greater danger? Before I could decide, another notification flashed across the screen. My heart lurched as I opened it, half expecting another photo or another menacing message. Instead, it was an address, a string of numbers and letters followed by brief instructions. Come alone. Midnight. Don't be late. My stomach twisted into knots. This was it, the moment everything changed. Whatever happened next would either save Emma or seal both our fates. There was no middle ground anymore. Midnight came too quickly. By the time I pulled into the deserted parking lot specified in the message, my nerves were frayed to the breaking point. The location was a crumbling warehouse on the outskirts of town, far enough away from prying eyes to ensure privacy and anonymity. As I stepped out of the car, the cold night air bit at my skin, sharp and unforgiving. Every sound echoed unnaturally loud in the empty space. The crunch of gravel underfoot, the distant hum of electricity lines overhead, the faint rustle of wind through dead trees. The building loomed before me, its windows boarded up and its walls streaked with grime. It looked abandoned, forgotten by time, but I knew better. Someone was waiting for me inside. For a moment, I hesitated. Should I turn back, drive straight to the police station, and hope they could piece together whatever mess I'd stumbled into? But then I thought of Emma, of the look in her eyes in that photo, and I knew I couldn't walk away. Not yet. Pushing open the heavy metal door, I stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and decay, each breath catching in my throat like sandpaper. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows across the cavernous interior. At first, all I saw were piles of discarded machinery and stacks of rotting crates. Then, as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I noticed movement in the corner of the room. A figure emerged from the darkness, silhouetted against the weak glow of the bulb. For a split second, I thought it was Emma, but as they stepped closer, my heart sank. It wasn't her. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his features obscured by a hood pulled low over his face. In one hand, he held a phone, the same model as mine. "You came," he said, his voice rough and devoid of emotion. "Good. Where's Emma?" I demanded, my own voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound strong. "What have you done with her?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he held up the phone, tapping the screen once. Another photo appeared, this one live, streaming in real time. It showed Emma sitting in the same dimly lit room as before, her head bowed and shoulders slumped. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile, defeated. "She's safe," he said finally, his tone indifferent. "For now. What do you want from me?" I asked, taking a cautious step forward. "Money? Information? Just tell me what you need, and I'll do it." His laugh was low and humorless, sending shivers down my spine. "This isn't about money. You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Then explain it to me." I snapped, anger cutting through my fear. "Why are you doing this? Why her?" He tilted his head, studying me like a predator sizing up its prey. "She asked questions she shouldn't have, dug where she didn't belong. Now it's your turn to make a choice." "What kind of choice?" I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, a USB drive. Holding it up between two fingers, he extended it toward me. "Take this. Everything you need to know is on here. But listen carefully. Once you take it, there's no going back. You'll see things you can't unsee. You'll learn truths you wish you hadn't." And when the time comes, his voice trailed off, leaving the implication hanging heavily in the air. I stared at the drive, torn between curiosity and terror. What secrets could possibly justify all of this? What horrors awaited me if I accepted it? But more importantly, if I refused, what would happen to Emma? Slowly, I reached out and took the drive. The moment my fingers closed around it, the man turned and disappeared back into the shadows, leaving me alone in the cavernous silence of the warehouse. As I drove home, clutching the USB drive like a lifeline, one thought consumed me. What had I just agreed to? And at what cost?